Let's go back now to our earlier sob story about Iran condemning Britain for supplying arms to Saudi Arabia in the war on Yemen. We're now joined once again by Mr. Tony Gosling, who is an investigative journalist, and he's joining us once again from Bristol. Mr. Gosling, if you can hear me, I wanted to ask you, how do you feel about Britain's accusations towards Iran, of course, and how Iran has responded?
Well, let's first have a look at who's making these accusations. Remember, of course, we've got a new government here with Theresa May as the Prime Minister, who hasn't been elected actually by the Conservative Party. 150,000 members never got a chance to have a say in who was going to be the new leader. But Tobias Ellwood, MP, who's made these accusations, is actually an American. He's a New Yorker. This is the state where we are now in Britain, is we have US Tory MPs. He's an army captain in the British Army, former army captain. And he's been saying the Yemeni children are being killed. Well, of course, he's right. He's making a fuss about that. But yet, at the same time, he's signing off licenses and supply of aircraft and bombs and munitions to kill those children. So there's a deep hypocrisy at the heart of the British Foreign Office with Tobias Ellwood in charge.
Indeed, and certainly it is a scandal, is it not, Mr. Gosling, the supplying of arms to a regime like Saudi Arabia, whether or not we take into account even its role in Yemen, just the fact that it's a dictatorship?
Well, that's true, and we never get any real reference to the fact that it's a monarchy and there is no elections in Saudi Arabia on the British press. Very little, although there was actually on Channel 4 News last week a very good report on the Yemen conflict. Let's just take stock of that, because Médecins Sans Frontières have said there's 45,000 people now being wounded, 6,500 people have been killed in Yemen. The main problem there now is that you've got something like 8 million people who've been displaced, and there is no actual proper healthcare system. The infrastructure, including the healthcare networks and the food networks, have been bombed by the Saudis with the help of the British, and there's millions of displaced. So also ISIS is thriving now in Yemen where it wasn't before. I mean, you've got the US and Saudi-backed Hadi, President Hadi. Or he's not got the support of the Yemeni people. What really needs to happen, I think, is an immediate election. So let's just make sure that whoever is trying to rule Yemen in these terrible times actually has the backing of the people, because Hadi clearly doesn't. And there are many people, including the Houthis, who are just fed up with the US and British continuing attempts to influence affairs in the Middle East. I think it's time for the British to just get out along with the Americans.
And as a final thought there, Mr. Gosling, do you think the UK is ready to live with the consequences of supporting the Saudis in their war in Yemen, or in them providing arms to terrorists, for example, in Syria as well?
Well, part of the problem is that the economy is in its death throes here in Britain. So the government and the military-industrial complex are absolutely desperate to find people to sell arms to. There's more quantitative easing. Yesterday, £60 billion has been injected in by to the economy to try and keep it alive by the Bank of England. We're going towards negative interest rates, zero growth. In fact, the growth would be probably negative in Britain if it wasn't for the drugs trade and prostitution, which are now being included in the figures. And they're also now talking about abolishing cash. So, as I say, the death throes of the economy, which is hardly being talked about in the financial press, and not to mention the problems with NATO internationally. Turkey swapping sides, it seems, from NATO to Russia. So these are desperate measures by a desperate government, and Tobias Ellwood actually could even be an American agent in the Tory party.
Very well, we'll leave it there at that point. But as always, Mr. Gosling, we of course appreciate you taking your time to speak to us.